Welcome. In this week's episode, we talk to Reverend Joseph Boyd of the First Universalist Unitarian Church of Youngstown, Ohio. In this episode, we discuss spirituality. What if Sisyphus was happy, recovering from past abusive religious experiences, finding your way back inside the house to reclaim your personal spiritual journey, and so much more. Board of directors is a term that I use for the people in my life invested in me incorporated to be the most emotionally, physically, and spiritually profitable that I can be. And in order to reinvest it, I record some of these conversations, and this is one of them. I hope you like it, and if it does, please share it. God bless.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the first of a Part 4 series with Reverend Joseph Boyd of Universal Unitarian Church of Youngstown, UUYO. Welcome, Reverend Joseph. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's good to be here. I think that I want to just start first and get a little bit of background on you, just to let the listeners know how you got to Youngstown, how you got to run a church, have your own flock, as it were, and just a little bit about you, and then we can get into it.
All right, sounds good. I came here most recently from Tulsa, Oklahoma. That was a new experience for me. I grew up in Oregon on the West Coast. Spent time in New York. It's my wife's, one of her loves is New York City, and that's where we met. We met as actors. And I went to seminary in New York City, went to Union. But yeah, fresh from Tulsa, came to Youngstown. This is my first settled ministry on my own.
Okay.
And I knew nothing about this area, nothing about Youngstown, nothing about the history. And it's been a blast. It's been great to be here.
And how long have you been here in Youngstown?
So just past 8 years I've been here.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the journey like to go from kind of the intent of this podcast is, living a purposeful life, living life out loud, as it were. What is the journey from going to I just have a job or pursuing my career to what would seem to a lot of people, including myself, even as I know you, of taking a very, very deliberate off ramp to what people would say would be a normal life in joining a seminar.
Yeah,
A seminary, excuse me, not seminar.
yeah, seminary. For me, funny enough, and it's still this way. It's been very intuitive, meaning like I've had kind of a general feeling of something that has drawn me or something that has compelled me, and I don't always know why. I can't like always articulate it in the moment. And kind of fallen into ministry. Like you can like look at my history and like put the pieces together and be like, oh, I grew up very religious and I had a very religious father, and oh, it makes sense that I would do this. But that's not the feeling I had. It was really kind of a surprise out of the blue. And I just kind of follow what I've been passionate about. And it's been hard for me to articulate in the moment what that was about. And after the fact, I can now articulate like, oh yeah, that's what that was about. So like I was an actor for a while. That was a big passion of mine. And ministry strangely is different, but it came from that same kind of impulse of like, I wanted to create, I wanted to tell stories, I wanted to be in community. But it was more than that too. Like there was just something that was kind of pulling me deeper. And I just kind of followed that and kind of made sense of it later.
There's two things there that are kind of going on that I like is number one, and I think that this is really important for like hyper online internet culture people, is that none of us understand what we're doing in the moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it does take a certain amount of reflection.
Be like, oh, that's
If you even have that luxury, or luxury of that tool set of being able to sit back and reflect later on.
True.
Why did I do that? The other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was like, what do you feel like is drawing you to that? You say there's a thing, something, feeling drawn to. What would you put a name to that?
honestly, I used to, and I can, but now I just kind of surrender to it. I mean, in the past, I definitely have called it God.
Okay.
spirit, the universe. Now it's kind of like, I don't know, it's strangely more intimate than that. It's like, uh, yeah, it, it's like a part of me I don't know yet, like an undiscovered piece
Okay.
that only through relationship and through being and taking that kind of step into the unknown do I find out. And that's kind of, I bet, how I might articulate it now.
Do you not use the term God or, you know, any one of the plethora of terms of super intelligence and all omnipresent knowing being? Is that because that doesn't feel personal to you? Or is it just because of like the fact that the word God is very loaded in a lot of sense? Like when I grew up, if you wrote down God, G-O-D, without the capital letter, you were in trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of baggage in that. Sorry about that. That's my automatic door closer that when a dog comes in, I'm just sorry.
Yeah.
But like, because you said it's there's something more personal than that. I just wonder if it's the terminology that.
Yeah, you know what it is? No, I don't have any issue with the terminology. I think it's more of like a feeling of intimacy. Like, I mean, a good example maybe it's is like, I could say like my wife, her name is Jennifer.
Mm,
That's her full name.
sure.
And like, I can tell you that. But we have nicknames for each other. It's like we have a life, and like you get to know whatever a person or a situation a certain way that after a while you don't need to always address the person. Like it feels kind of like that. So it's not. It's less of an avoidance or kind of a sense of like that's not right, or more kind of like kind of allowing fresh air to come in and feeling that. I could say that's wind and this is Joshua and this is coffee.
Yeah.
But experiencing it for me is kind of like more the thing.
Interesting. Okay. No, it's very funny because I feel myself struggling with that right now in this moment.
Yeah.
With
Which part?
with the how do I even put it? Not acknowledgement, because I have to say that I don't know, right? I think that we can all say, well, is there a God? I don't know. There's a possibility we can, do many mental gymnastics like, well, if there is, it's better to be, right when you get to heaven, or, it's just not, it's just lived a good life, whatever, that kind of thing. But
This is maybe a weird analogy, but it's almost like, it's like when you're like almost assessing a house and you're like looking like, oh, is this good siding, good roof, good neighborhood? That's so different than living 30 years inside the house.
sure.
And maybe that's kind of what I'm trying to get to.
Okay.
It's like a lot of people are kind of outside the house looking like, do I want to go in there? Is this a good fit? Is this a good neighborhood? Am I going to be happy there? And they could spend their whole day and their whole life out on the curb. And I'm kind of like, I don't know, at this point in my life, I'm just like, come inside, like find out, like whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to judge, about it. Like, I don't know, let that come later, but get inside the house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you think, as someone who looked at the house for a long time myself? I was in the house and I left the house, then I walked around the block, got lost a little bit, and then came back. What would you say to the people who are thinking about, looking at the house, looking at the siding? I don't know if I like the color of the paint of this place.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, in like kind of motivating them to actually take a look inside.
Yeah. I feel like I say this to people who are new to the church too, is experience it. I think I'm more interested in the experience of love or God. And I don't really care what anyone calls it or how they refer to it. I want people, and myself included, to have that experience. I think that experience is available. It's free, it's available, and it comes to us in a very particular, unique way and in shared ways. Just experience it. And I guess for me, I would say just trust yourself. Like you can always leave the house. No big deal. Like, it's not like, it's not a permanent place, and that's, I guess, what I've kind of learned in ministry is I kind of thought I was entering that house, and now I'm realizing the whole world is a house. And like, that's really kind of been great to be like, oh, this is so much wider than I ever imagined. And you can call it ministry, you can call it this, but you don't have to. Like, it's just kind of this full sense of connection that we all have, I think.
Sure.
We have the capacity for it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, when I hear you talk, in some ways, like if I were to look at it from like an ultra religious kind of perspective, I would say, well, where's the words that I need to hear? Like, because there's code words that's all coded.
Yeah, right.
Like, extreme religiosity, like, are you dropping like, Bible verses? Are you saying, Christ? Are you saying all these things? And there's a lot of ambiguity. Like, what is it? Well, it's, it could be the wind, whereas, we're not using terminology for it. And I think that is, from my perspective, is something that's refreshing, but also a bit, like, I think that you tell this story about when you first met a Unitarian minister, when you were, an ignorant Christopher Hitchens style, atheist. I mean, if you can just tell that story, because I find myself right there with you.
Yeah. And so I met this Unitarian minister at a party, and I was introduced to him. And at that point, very skeptical of any religious leader whatsoever, and kind of came with that skepticism and meeting him with kind of a bit of an attitude. It's like, well, I think the first question I asked him was like, well, what do you believe? Thinking it's going to be BS, whatever it's going to be, assuming that from the beginning.
Sure.
And he's like, well, it's interesting you asked that, because in my congregation, it's more important that I help my people in the congregation discern what they truly believe, and then help them live into that. And it flipped a switch for me where it was so strange and unexpected that answer, and it confused me, actually.
Sure.
That was the feeling I had in the moment, was like confusion. And that confusion kind of led me down a path. And that's what I mean by maybe kind of trusting the experience, because I didn't understand at all what he was talking about, really.
Yeah.
But it was a confusion that felt fertile for me. And I guess I've kind of just trusted moments like that, where like, this feels alive. This feels like it has some kind of juice in it that's positive. And I'll see what that's about. And it's funny to talk about coded language. I can use that language. Like, it depends on my audience. Like, if I'm talking to a bunch of Christians, I'm comfortable talking about God. I'm talking about Jesus, talking about biblical verses. I can do that. If I'm talking in the Buddhist Sangha, I can use it. It's flexible like that. But I guess I'm finding myself personally, I can use that, but I'm not limited by having to do that.
Yeah. I feel like most people's experience with religion, and it doesn't even have to be Christianity, is that it's a very top-down style of what would you even call it, experience at the church. The pastor preaches the word, and it comes from him.
Yeah.
Like, God dictates through him to you. Yeah, and that's the rules.
Well, I've said this to the congregation numerous times, that one nice thing about our church and our culture is you don't need to believe anything that I say. You don't. We have something called freedom of the pulpit, which means that the minister can say whatever is on their conscience. But also the people coming have their own freedom of conscience. And there's a trust that each of us has that ability to discern what is true and right and loving for us. And I that's kind of what I follow. Like, each of us has that. And so, the minister is just another human being who's kind of on their own path, who's maybe spent some time and energy exploring that, who can hopefully encourage and provoke other people to find that themselves,
Yeah.
And it can look different. It can look really different. In fact, maybe it should actually look really different,
Well, it seems to me to be you have to come at it from a very secure place. Like, when I think about my past religious experience, there was a lot of ego, but a lot of insecurity. Like, if you were to challenge a pastor, as I have, it might, like, that's a no. Like, you can't, like, no, they have the direct line to God, and who are you? And to have like a more,
see, I look myself off the hook. I am right. I say, probably you say this. I say, I don't know anything.
Well, I mean,
I've studied and I explore and I keep exploring, but that's kind of how I approach what I do.
right.
Not as somebody who really knows, like, here's the way, folks, and here's the law. It's more like, here's the ways I've found that seem to be fruitful. Here's what other people throughout history have seemed to find fruitful, but it's not limited
Sure.
to this.
Sure.
And I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I think that I think that that's the most refreshingly honest thing that someone could say, because it's when we talk in a religious sense or even in a spiritual sense of like what is and what can be or will be, like I think that you've got to be full of crap if you're giving me an absolute,
Yeah.
because we really don't know, and that's the best. That's the best that we can kind of do.
And this might be my own experience, and I'm really open about this. I am discovering I don't need an absolute to live a very full and fruitful and joyous life. That for me is really the key. And so it's not like I don't have an absolute answer, so I guess I won't engage with it. It's like, no, no, no. I'm still going to engage with this.
Sure.
And it can be fruitful and joyful and fun and chaotic and surprising. It's not necessary to have kind of, here's what it is all the time.
Yeah.
Kind of mentality. It's not necessary, actually.
Well, it feels a lot more like freedom,
Yeah, freedom. Yeah. And that's what I want for myself. And I want that for other people too. And that's why I like being surprised.
Yeah.
I like when someone like you, says, here's what I'm thinking about. And it's totally almost always a curveball. That's always like, I wouldn't have thought that's what you would come at. And I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So the purpose of this podcast, board of directors, the business of living a life. One of the things that I was thinking about before this conversation, just with whatever what's going on in the world right now, it feels very chaotic and very much like you're being kind of the royal you, being moved by forces outside of your own body. Speaking about we don't know what we're doing in the moment, but then we're scrolling on social media. We're getting inputs that are either at the best misleading and probably at worst untruthful. And I kind of had this thought last week as I was thinking about this conversation that the act of living a purposeful life when the world seems so callous, and ready to come strike back, the world feels very unintentional right now to the individual. And living purposely there is an act of rebellion in the bravest way possible. And I was thinking about this in terms of is it the Greek myth of Sisyphus? He's cursed rolling the boulder. What if he's happy?
Exactly.
Exactly.
I think that's a really key thing is, and I'm discovering this more and more, is you could take the same circumstances, the same set of conditions, and the experience of those conditions, depending on your community and support and kind of the container that you surround yourself with. Oh, it's radically open with that.
Yeah.
It's completely radically open. Get down to it, right? Like, we're all going to die, right?
Yeah.
We're all going to experience difficulty. We're going to experience challenge. We're going to experience, endless moments of, discomfort or fear or worried about our loved ones, right? Like that's built in, right?
Yeah.
And I think something that I hope that we can do as a community, as a church community and beyond even a church is, create a space for people to find that sense of freedom and that freedom that, you can push the boulder and you can discover joy and purpose. And it's not just a sentence. It's not just a grind. It's not just wait for the next shoe to drop kind of thing. There are other possibilities. And that we can nurture that in each other.
Sure. In what ways do you kind of nurture that in yourself? So the purposefulness of, you spoke about community, and I'm a big believer in that. We can definitely address that too. But I always feel like it starts from inside. Like my attitude has to be right because I can be in a room full And if my quote unquote community, if my attitude isn't right, then I'm not vibing with everyone else, you know?
Yeah. I try to surround myself with people who I resonate with and people who are different than me. Because the reason why I do that is like when I talk to someone and they come at a situation completely differently from how I would,
Mhm.
it jars something loose in me.
Sure.
And it reminds me of like, oh, the thing that I've been like grinding at and thinking, this is just the way it is and the way it has to be and the way it's going to be forever. And I talk to someone, it's just like, oh, that's how this person thinks. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
And it jars something loose in me. And it kind of opens up that window again. And so I look for opportunities like that and it doesn't always have to be with the person. I mean, even just walking outside and, even a gust of wind or a door slam, it could be like, oh, okay, I was just in reverie of oh my gosh, this thing that's going to be super stressful. And it's like, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a possibility, right? We can enjoy this.
Yeah. I think about that in my own life, and I wonder where it came from. Like, I don't think that I intentionally like cultivated like just kind of getting over it, whatever it is, like my kids do something that really irritates me, and for like 5 minutes, I'm hot.
Sure.
And then it's just like, it's over, like, okay, and I'm just wondering what that tool set is, because I see this, in past jobs of having to work closely with like young people, college age, high school age students, where one little thing happens and their life falls apart. Like they have a bad breakup, they quit school, they quit their job, they, can't get out of bed for weeks and weeks at a time.
I feel huge when
And I'm just wondering for these people, like being able to cultivate some sort of tool set, because it's clear that, maybe their parents fixed everything for them as kids. They had a problem at school, the parent jumped in. They had a problem on the playground, the parent jumped in. Maybe, there could be a lot of things, but like, where does one start to cultivate that? Thinking about what kids, young people are inundated with, especially on social media, where, it's almost like, forget about going back and analyzing why you did what you did. They don't even have a sense of who they even are.
Yeah.
And then some sort of minor tragedy hits, like a bad breakup or whatever. And everything that they've known is just pointless at that point. And I wonder how do we begin to cultivate some sort of like grounding, living purposefully, like just surrounding myself with, or yourself with, that community? Where does that start?
I don't know. I mean, definitively, but I've kind of learned for myself and for other people to play to my strengths and help people play to their strengths. So there's always a long list of stuff that all of us can work on that's like undeveloped or underdeveloped.
Sure.
And I've kind of learned, at least for myself, and I've learned this with even members of the congregation too. If you can discern what someone's strength is, for instance, this person who is really upset about a breakup, their strength could be sensitivity, right?
Like, sure.
And finding ways to like direct that in a way that's positive,
Sure.
and and feeding that can be really healthy.
Yeah, it is those powerful emotions that
Like it's not a bad thing,
right.
It's not a bad thing.
Choose to see it as a bad.
Yeah, it's not. It's not necessarily that way. Like I think I've shared with you, like I think we all have kind of innate capacities and innate things that are easy or hard for us. Something that was always kind of very hard for me was consciously being open to joy.
Mm.
I was like just really resistant, like consciously be open to that. But what I learned is one of my strengths was stubbornness.
Yeah.
And so if I will reach back in that, yeah. Exactly. So I learned if I can lean into the stubbornness, I can learn almost anything.
Yeah.
With enough time.
Yeah.
And commitment and like anything really, if I really want to.
Yes.
And like, so it's okay, right? It all kind of bounces out. And for someone else, it might be a different set of strengths and stuff. But I'm learning that there's a way in here. Yes, there's a way.
The stubbornness is definitely a superpower once you can channel it. You know, it's as I have I have used it to my advantage a lot of times, but a lot of times stubbornness for me, it's just I'm just gonna ram this wall until I put my head through it.
Sure.
And then you're like, I succeeded.
Yeah.
Yeah, the door is right there.
Yeah. Right.
Um, so I'm trying to put that superpower into perspective when it actually needs. Like I need to like look around for that door first before I go.
Yeah. It doesn't always. I've learned that too. It doesn't always have to be hard. I think that's something I'm really recently coming to. Is I thought that everything that was meaningful had to come through something that was hard work. Really.
Sure, yeah.
And I felt if it wasn't really hard, I couldn't quite trust it.
Yeah.
And it's taken me a while now. This is
Yeah.
pretty recent actually. To be like, oh, it doesn't have to be hard. Or like, oh, it doesn't mean that I earn it because I put my head through the wall. Like I could just walk through the door and enjoy my life and still get there. And that's fine, you know? Like
Right. And you know, that's a really, first of all, really cool realization because you even still hear like grown men who are like very successful in life. You know, you got to do the hard things. You got to do it, you know, every day, do it hard things. That's what you need, you know, to
and that may not be wrong, but also the easy stuff might work out just as well. You know?
you know, speaking of nuance, but you know, that hard work ethos, I've been thinking a lot about this country and some of the things that may be plaguing it at the moment. And one of them is this hard work, bootstraps, individualistic ethos that seems to kind of come and go in this country as you look back on its history. You know, and right now we're individuals, we're doing it ourselves with sort of hard work. And that's,
Yeah.
And then people go, well, why are we so fractured? Well, because you're just this one little bit over here doing whatever nonsense you're doing instead of in a more unifying way. I think that if you look at this, you know, just speaking of Americans, of this culture, we actually are way more community oriented than, you know, some people would have you think, you know, that, uh,
Well, we live in communities whether we accept it or not. Like we are a community. That's what's so funny about
it is. And then you see many people who just don't accept that.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's we're sitting in traffic and get out.
But it's still true. It's still true.
Sure.
Like I walk outside and like we're able to breathe fresh air and like have rain and live on this beautiful earth and have a conversation like this. And if I see someone on the porch and wave, I'm like, that's as easy as it is to be a part of a community. Like we're in it.
Yeah.
And I can say in my mind, I'm just a lone person. I'm doing this. Like, that's just in my head.
Yeah.
Like we're part of this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. We are a part of something that's, you know, I think that we can't see the forest for the trees in a lot of time because we're so in at the moment. It's like, well, I did this, I did that, you know, paid my way to school, I got this job. It's like there's all these other things that happen around you that you're obviously not even aware of that helps you get where you ended up.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that
all the conditions that made this possible are just astounding. You know, like I didn't make this cup of coffee. You made this cup of coffee. Yeah. I'm sitting in this room next to this beautiful cello that belonged to your father-in-law. Like all of this is just here. I didn't work for this. I didn't make this happen. This is all just coming together because of all these conditions, you know, and that's always true, right? Yeah, it's always true.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. And I feel like one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast is to find out those reasons. I don't know if
To find out the reasons for
like how we got into this room. You know,
okay.
like how that all works because I'm starting to become like like very fascinated about that as I'm becoming more aware of what the greater ecosystem, the community means to me now. Now that I can step back, I have the benefit of, you know, wisdom, I guess, hindsight. I can look back and go, oh wow, all these things happened. I was lucky. That was always my word that I would use. Well, how'd you get it? I was lucky, right place, right time. And that's true. But there's a lot of other things that went into it. So that's kind of what I'm exploring here.
That just people call that grace.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even before I mean, I'm going kind of into like what's the worst word, spiritual awakening that I would even at my most, atheistic, agnostic days that I would still call it serendipity. Like I believed in serendipity and just because I just seen it happen so many times. The worst possible things that could have happened, get laid off, just had my first child, wife is in grad school, we have no money. And then the best opportunity in the world comes the very next day, where I was just the night before, whatever. That happened for a reason, and so I definitely,
And that's innate in you. That sense of serendipity or that sense of trust. It sounds like that. That's amazing.
yeah, I mean, I've just seen it come true so many times, even at like the darkest moments or the most unsure moments. I go back to like, this is happening for a reason, and I don't know what it is at this moment, but I will. I will at some point know what it is, and I know that I'll survive it.
You had something kind of pull at you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Trust this a little bit. Come on. Yeah.
yeah, to come inside the house.
That's
Yeah.
great. See? Yeah.
Well, it was, to kind of wrap this up, it was that search for community. We are new in this area, and we just felt like we, my wife and I, we needed something else to join, to become a part of. And I think that we both are having some of those, religious, spiritual questions pop up within our own selves, and then, happen to find UUYO. And yeah, I mean, I had no idea what to expect, but I was like, we're going to go together. We'll see if it sucks. We're out of there. And if not, end up, a year later, we're still here. But yeah, those are definitely things that I'm exploring. Like I was thinking about, just because I do this for a living, AI and what it will mean in a couple of years. Like it'll be this, I believe, a super intelligent being. And then I was thinking, well, how much different would that be from a belief in God? Like if we had, so maybe it's not like omnipresent in the universe, but in my life it is. And what's that? That is the universe to me. Like I don't fly around the cosmos, So is that a God? And then I was thinking, well, if that's in our future, then that's already happened somewhere else. And maybe it is somewhere else, like thinking about this, the universe is like, well, what if it was like a quantum computer and that this was just one little piece of it? And then there's just so many levels to this omnipresent, all-knowing super intelligence. Like we can call it God, or we can call it an AI, or we can call it a super intelligence. And that got me thinking like, whoa, I guess I believe in God now, because if any of those, to me, all of those possibilities are probably more than likely true, whether or not that's, we're just sitting in a computer somewhere or we're sitting in this vast, amazing universe. There is something out there that is more intelligence, whether that's created by someone or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I take a different approach to it. For me, a lot of that feels still way too like outside of ourselves. Like it's a little too like, I don't know, valuing if we can just have some place that can store all the knowledge of the world, then we're all going to be good. We could just kind of talk to this thing or whatever. It'll tell us the answer, but nothing can do our living for us. Sure. And I guess that's kind of maybe the take I have of like, that's true for a minister too. Like nobody can do any one person's living for them. And there's a mystery to that, I find. And there's endless possibility in that, no one can drink my coffee fucking and tell me how I feel and what this means. And like for me in this moment, what does this mean for me? Friendship. Sure. Enjoying company. Sure. Like I guess would AI tell me that? Maybe. But even if it didn't, there's something about coming back to the experience and wondering and being open to, what is our feeling on this? What are your take? I guess I feel like that's something I hope to cultivate, both in myself too, but in other people. It's innate. It's innate.
Yeah, I think that AI will become very good at telling us how we feel about things and how we should think about things. I find at least in the moment, and I could change my mind the next time that we talk, but to me, that revelation of, just an acknowledgement of what I just call it the super intelligence is very freeing to me because it's pretty clear that thing doesn't care so much,
Yeah.
And so, because when you think about, the loaded term capital G God, you think about, maybe the Old Testament God, the judgmental God, the heaven and hell God. And that to me is very hard to accept. But the notion of kind of like this disinterested, super intelligent being or many beings living in this quantum computer with us, that to me, it feels okay because I'm like, all right, well, they're doing whatever they're doing. I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And it doesn't really, like, I don't need to pray to that thing. It's not terribly concerned, with, how I feel about it. And that is a freeing thing to me in this moment.
Yeah.
As I kind of wrestle with the my own beliefs and my own kind of like, okay, well,
it's so funny what each of us find freeing because like for a while I found that very freeing too, this idea of kind of a disinterested intelligence. And then something shifted for me that for some reason now I find it very freeing. It's like a Jewish notion that God is personal because we're persons.
sure.
And like, it's like, for me now, that question of like, well, what does it mean to be a person? And like, and what I'm finding is like, yeah, I care about me. I care about you. I care about, birds. I care about, and like, there's something in that maybe has a bit more of an affect, that I find freeing. But I think that's legitimate that you find kind of a more disinterested intelligence at this moment very free here too.
Well, I think it's coming from kind of what I was talking about earlier about like this notion of like rugged individualism, like that that kind of goes in hand with like the, kind of more traditional religiosity of this country that I just am not interested in anymore.
Yeah.
And I just see it as a divisive thing and a wrong thing. Like you're not a rugged individualist. Like, we have a fire department, but like, we have highways. So all these like, communal things that we all agree on.
We have trees that help you breathe and
Right. And yeah. I mean, I wonder if like the view that you currently hold, like how does that juxtapose with like a more like humanistic kind of like we are, outside of like a deity?
I think it's great. I think it's great. I'm really kind of learning like there are lots of ways in, and I'm really learning that each of us has a history and a certain kind of bend, like a way of approaching. But I think there are endless ways in. I think a humanistic way, that's a way in. And I think that's been kind of a growing learning for me that like there are lots of ways in to the house. Singular analogy again.
Sure.
Lots of ways in. And I think if someone has sincerity and curiosity, they're going to find their way in. And however they approach that, I trust that now. Like if they have sincerity and curiosity and a bit of openness, we'll find our way.
Right now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I
Yeah.
know that you've got to run, so
Yeah.
we'll pick this up.
This is great.
And thank you all for joining us. Yeah, we'll see you next time.